Hey, what's up, guys? Node Investor here. Who's first? You're first? I'm first? Welcome, everybody. It's time for a weekly recap as we head into the weekend. Happy Friday. Almost Saturday for some of you guys. But thanks for being here. Where was I? It was radio silence for a minute or two, but here we are. We're going to look at the charts. We're going to look at some just some news items, some discussion points from the week, and then we will absolutely look at the broader picture in Bitcoin, take a little deep dive, and then look at some of the altcoins, see what's happening in altcoin land. Right now, Bitcoin, it's an interesting little juncture here. It's sitting on a ledge, ready to drop or ready to pop. I'm betting on a little bit of a shakeout first. Shakeout, breakout. Shakeout, fake out, breakout. But we'll see. We'll see how this one plays out, and we'll get into all the details there. And of course, as always, I'll leave a little time here for you guys to make some chart requests. We'll do some deep diving there. And anything else, if you want to ask questions around technical analysis, trading, risk reward, setups, all that fun stuff, feel free to throw it out there. I'll try to keep an eye on the comments here and go from there. So let's get to it here. Let's take a look at, let me see here. What do I want to do first here? Let's do the week in review before we go into the deep dive of the Bitcoin chart and then the alt here. As we can see here, I mean, the broader chart for the last, what is this, 2 weeks now? Ever since that pretty good drop here on September 24th. There's been some, if you go to the lower time frames, there's been some tradable rallies and dips that you could short, however you want to play that. But for the most part, it's been in a very narrow trading range relative to what Bitcoin normally does. If you caught yesterday's video that I posted, I went through some of the broader technicals on this, and it's in a technical downtrend. If you look at the dollar or the daily chart, on the USD side here on Coinbase, we can see that the moving averages are bearishly inverted, meaning the short-term moving average is below the longer one. Price is generally trading below those, and the moving averages are heading lower. And, granted, support continues to hold up, so the bulls have defended this 7,700, 7,800, whatever you want to call it, level, but the broader trend is down, potentially setting up for a little bit more of a drop lower. So I'm cautious right now until proven otherwise. But we got to see what happens here if we dive in, and we will dive into the lower levels to see what I'm watching here. There are some divergences showing up and all that good stuff, but we'll certainly get into that here. Looking at the big picture here, going to that BTC dominance chart, of course, Bitcoin dominance has fallen off a little bit, not drastically, right? We haven't seen that, across the board, what we would call alt season. There have absolutely been some great alt rallies since Bitcoin dominance has peaked here in September. There's been some really strong ones, right? XRP, Link, 0x. There's been a handful, but it's not been like this across the board alt rally where they're all moving in tandem. You got to be a little bit more judicious right now and pick your poison, pick it wisely. And mostly has been just kind of trading, right? It's, you catch the move, you might hold it for a swing trade or, even maybe a position trade for a little bit of a few days or a week or two. But then most of it has just been bank your profits when you get it and, go from there. So that's how I've been trading it right now. But we can see this dominance has dropped a little bit. The others category slightly edging up. That's mostly the small mid-cap names. The biggest gainer here on the list is XRP, has probably gained the most ground relative to Bitcoin here as of late. Looking at some notable news items. I've been seeing a lot of articles talking about Facebook Libra, and of course there's been a lot of noise around this since they announced, but here in the last 2 weeks, Zucks was in Washington, standing before the legislation and talking about what this means. There's a lot of pushback from the G7 nations now, basically, the countries that control the world economy, let's be real. And of course, you're getting some bailouts, right? Some big companies that were part of the foundation bailing out. Now, personally, and of course, it's just me, conspiracy theory, but personally, I strongly believe that most of those companies bailing out are doing so not out of their own merit, but mostly are going to be doing so because of pressure from, institutions, establishments that feel threatened by Libra, right? Things like the Fed and some of those. So you have companies that are very powerful, very influential, but they got to play nice, right? Like people like PayPal, they got to play nice to continue to keep their position. And so that's my thoughts there. You're seeing a lot of that backing out. Not that I'm a fan of Libra by any means. We know that this is going to be another tool that's going to be used to gather more information on you, track your payments and all that good stuff. But the powers that be want their own version of this. And so you're getting a lot of pushback here, seeing a lot of that noise here in recent days here. Tether was in the news here recently. You're talking about, only 104 Tether addresses control 70% of the supply. We've known for a long time that Tether is very concentrated. There's a lot of mystery and red flags around this, and some of the the entities that are all related to Bitfinex and Tether and just all of that happens. But love it or hate it, arguably Tether is one of the most successful cryptos out there. When you think about what they've done, right? Volume wise, they're tremendous, right? They're way up there, on par with Bitcoin in terms of trading volume, daily volumes. They fit a need, right? When you're a crypto trader, a lot of times you don't necessarily want to take your money off an exchange, but you want to go into a stable coin. Tether was, the biggest one early on, right? Obviously there's more stable coins. It's a very competitive field, and rightly so. If you have the power of the printing press, if you will, controlling the issuance of a supply like this, there's a lot of influence that you can wield. You can, I'm not saying they're manipulating prices, but you have that power, especially when you're this large. But nonetheless, certainly has fit the, the need there. There has been a lot of pushback, of course, from the U.S. in terms of what they are. So that's why they banned, Bitfinex, and you don't generally see Tether on very many exchanges here stateside. I know Kraken does and all that, but it's not very common. But that's interesting to see that big supply here. I remember the days of Tether when we were all just waiting for the implosion, right? Waiting for the house of cards to fall, and every time there was any sort of news or scares around Tether, just the price of Bitcoin would just see a big spike lower, and so we haven't seen that in a while. Let's hope we don't again. And finally, the Bitcoin halving. It's about 6 months away now, and that we're getting closer. Coming into the year, people were talking about this. Certainly, I think this drove a lot of the rally that we saw early on in the year. But with 6 months left, the big question is, are we going to see that pre-halving rally, that big pump that everyone's expecting? Will it go to new all-time highs, or are we, just, this is overhyped? What do you guys think? Is the halving even a factor at this point? Is it overhyped? Has it been priced in? There's talk of institutions buying into this, and you got a lot of folks on the talking heads on CNBC and some of those saying, no, this is the biggest catalyst in crypto since the last halving. But and certainly from a long-term fundamental perspective, this changes the game, right? Obviously, the block reward is going to continue to drop, and it's a big drop at this point. You're going down to 6.5 BTC per block reward, down from 12. It was at 25 in 2012, so this is going to certainly start to drop. And as a long-term holder of BTC, by far, this is the biggest benefit that Bitcoin has, is the fact that the supply is maintained in this fashion. And we're approaching that point where, a good majority of the BTC that is scheduled to be released is going to be out there. We're at what, 70-80% now? There's, out of the 21 million Bitcoin, a good chunk of them are already out there, and arguably, many of those are not even touchable or lost or whatever reason, right? And so the long-term supply-demand fundamentals are really the biggest benefit that Bitcoin has going for it. especially with its decentralized nature and truly not controlled by a startup or a project or anything like that, or a foundation, unlike most cryptos, right? And so that's really it. Here we go, Bitcoin halving. My personal expectation is I do expect to see a pre-halving rally. Will it hit all-time highs, new highs? Who knows? But I'm thinking we will see it in and around going into May of next year. So we'll see how that one plays out. So enough of me squawking and talking about the news and all this fun stuff. We'll get to the charts. Before I do, I want to just remind everybody, if you're new to trading, new to crypto, there's some resources out on nodeinvestor.com. Go to the training tab. You can look at the 4-step cryptocurrency course. Covers a wide range of things. I think the total course is probably maybe 13 hours across all various topics. Deep dive into a bunch of technical indicators, risk management, a little bit of psychology in there, and put it in all together with some trading strategies to kind of give you an idea. But along with this, you'll get an invite to the Slack group. So that's it. Let's get to it here. We'll look at the charts. The overall market status right now, it's basically been in the red for a while. BTC has just been weak. The trend is not your friend. It's certainly in favor of the sellers at the moment. There has been a few movers on the altcoin side, but the broader market has been defensive here as of late here. So let me close this guy out. So let's get to the chart here. Looking at Bitcoin price here. This is the daily chart. Not a lot of indicators on here right now, just the moving averages. But ever since breaking down from that, that big descending triangle that we saw here a few months back, it's pretty much just been in the sideways range. Feels like a continuation pattern, like a little bit of a flag forming. I had the breakdown, found some support around 7,800, been bouncing around. Last week was really the first good attempt to spike into that. Of course, that went right into 8,800. If you cut the live stream when we saw that rally, I had marked out a few targets on the way up. 8,600, 8,800, and then 9K were kind of those targets. Pretty much went to that 8,800. That was really a little bit of a shakeout too, because I was long into this here, and then I went flat, and it looked like it was about to break out, and then it was just a huge reversal candle, big bearish engulfing candle, and since that point it's just kind of been drifting lower and right back at this support level. Here we go again, about to test this 7,700 level. Will it hold? Will the bulls finally rally? That's going to be interesting going into the weekend. I expect this will be resolved one way or the other. My bet is we'll probably see a little bit of a shakedown first and then maybe a pop, but I'm thinking we're going to break this line here. So that's what I'm watching. 7,800 is really the kind of the round number. I'm thinking we'll break that line. If it does, what are some of the key levels to be watching here? Let me zoom out here on this daily charts. This is probably familiar for most of you guys if you guys have been following along, but let's just kind of take a quick look here. Looking left here to that May-June period, this lower mid 7K range was really the last big support, basically around that 7,500 level, give or take. And the price is just right above that. So, in all honesty, it wouldn't take a whole lot, a little spike lower into that point, and we'd quickly be there. Below that point, there really is not a lot of support. I mean, you've got a little bit of a wick down here. I don't know how much value you would give that wick at that point. Next bigger support is kind of right in here. That's what, 5,800. So that kind of lines you up with the 6K range, but it's a little bit of a gap at that point, right? It's pretty much anyone's guess. If it cracks 7,500, where along this point will it land, right? It's just kind of anyone's guess at that point. You can look at some fib retracement levels. If you look at the fib analysis ratios from the ultimate lows in December, we'll do this two ways. Going from the ultimate lows in December to the peak that we saw in June, I'm going to go to the wick, then your 618 is right around 7,200. However, if you use the impulse move, meaning the start of the big move on that breakout day on April 1st, then that certainly adjusts it a little bit. And then it puts the 618 right at where we are right now. I mean, 78.31 is where that 618 retracement level lands from that perspective. And then 7,500 is just below that. So it's, we're kind of in that ballpark, right? If the long-term trend is going to remain in place, this long-term uptrend that started in December or April, however you want to play that. Generally speaking, you want the 618 retracement to hold. Once it starts to get below that, it just shows general weakness on part of the bulls. You know, I'm not a big fan of the 786 level or whatever, right? Once you get past 618, to me, it's just very bearish at that point. So we're kind of at that point where, hey, bulls better step up here, kind of hold this line, if you will, or maybe have a little shakeout, spike under, take out some of the stops, and then boom, pop it, right? Which we generally see in this space. There's a lot of wicks, a lot of that fun stuff before they rally it. So the way I'm playing it right now is I'm basically neutral on BTC, and I'm talking trading account. I'm not talking long-term holds, but I'm neutral on BTC. I still have my short position open on not XRP, on ETH. I skipped my chart. Here we go. And so, basically I'm net short at this point. I was long XRP, closed most of that out. So I'm basically net short at this point on the trading side of things, and just going to be waiting till this one plays out, just taking it slower at this point. Yeah, it is at the 50 weekly EMA. Let's go to the weekly chart here. A couple of things to note on the weekly chart. And I'm going to clear all these lines real quick here so it doesn't distract you guys. And so this is on the USD chart on Coinbase. And looking at the weekly, and I'll drop that 50 weekly on there. And this is the SMA, not EMA on the weekly. But you can see on the weekly chart, it's right at the 50 SMA on the weekly, sitting right there. Still trading below the 10 and the 22 weekly EMA. So again, a little bit on the bearish side. The 10 is about to cross over to the downside. And that's generally negative from a long-term chart perspective, just because you can see here, there's very few crossovers, right? You had a crossover here and it stayed bearish. Here you had a bullish crossover and it stayed positive up until the big spike. And now we're potentially going to see another bearish crossover on the long-term side. And again, that's not something on the weekly chart that happens very frequently. I mean, if you go back here, the last bullish crossover was at the start of the big bull market here in 2016. Let me go to Bitstamp, get you some more history. Where was the last bullish crossover? Way back here, October of 2015. So you can see that back and forth, it doesn't happen very often, which is why it's generally a signal to pay attention to. It's not an automatic buy or sell. At that point, you're generally late to the game anyway, right? I mean, if you were looking to sell this climactic action at 13, 14K is when you wanted to take some of the profits, but this is kind of just showing some confirmation there. So a lot of cross currents going on, no doubt. I don't pretend to know where price will be next month or next year like other people do, but I just take it one day at a time, as I say, especially from a trading account. The big picture from a trading perspective, honestly, doesn't really come into play that much for me. I mean, you look at the weekly charts, you kind of get the bigger trend, but when I'm looking at the shorter term trading, I'm looking at 4-hour charts generally. Yeah, you'll pay attention to the daily, and then I'll use the 1-hour chart for a little bit more of a tactical approach in terms of timing the entry. But, from a long-term hold perspective, yeah, absolutely, right? If you're just looking from long-term holds, daily and weekly is really all you need. You don't need to pay attention to all the noise below the daily charts, in my opinion. So that's where we're at with Bitcoin. Let's dial it in one more time here, looking at the closer point of view here. I'll go to that 4-hour chart. Let me clear some of these lines here for you guys. I'll leave those blue lines here so we can see that, the blue lines that I have marked out are basically, this 77, 80 range, right? Which is right where we've seen a lot of support on a closing basis. And then on the upside, the top of the range, it's a pretty wide range, but the top of the range here is 8,600 basically. And a close above that would be very positive. Now, on the short-term time frames, what I'd be looking for here, potential bounce from this line. You're seeing a bullish divergence, maybe forming here on this 4-hour chart as it tests the lower end. A little bit of a spike, but yeah, I mean, in all honesty, it's not a very bullish one. You're not seeing a ton of buy volume here at the lows just yet. And so, just kind of paying attention to that. Maybe it holds. The daily chart tells me it wants to crack and go lower. The 4-hour chart saying, hey, maybe we get a little bit of a bounce first and then it cracks, right? On the 1 hour chart, if you're playing it really short-term time frame, what I'd be paying attention to is these moving averages and price getting above this very near-term point. So basically for me, 79.50 to 8K. If it can start to hold above that on the 1 hour chart, might see some more follow through to the upside. You've got some very near-term resistance here on the 1 hour chart around 8,100. If you're playing it with margin and that sort of thing, that's going to be kind of your first target to pay attention to. And then above that, you know, closer to this 8,200, which has been the prior support, now new resistance here. So this is the way I'm looking at it, right? So if it does continue to bounce, this is kind of your first target there. Next target is this range going into 8,200-ish, 8,250 or so. And so that's what I'd be watching, but we'll see. I'm not, especially going into the weekend. Lately, I've been taking the weekends off for the most part and really dialing down the trading. So, you know, during the weekday when I'm more active and, you know, on the screens and trading the stocks and doing other things, you know, I'm more inclined to take the short-term scalps and the quick trades. Over the weekends, I kind of use that to kind of refresh a little bit, and you know, I'm not too inclined to watch these little 1 hour scalps and trade all that fun stuff. I mean, I'm not saying that you know you shouldn't or anything, but that's just me. That's kind of my my recharge time, and do things not in front of the screen. Try to, at least. Try to go more than 5 hours without checking the charts. How often do you guys check the charts, by the way? How many times a day do you guys look at the charts? 24 hours? All right, so let's get to some other charts. I think that's it for BTC here. Probably not a whole lot to cover until we get a move out of this range. The daily 10 EMA sits right around 8,100. The 22 is at 8,420. Let me see here. There was a question on... What's your thoughts on the monthly 10 simple crossing the 21 EMA? You know, I don't really look at the monthly too much. I know some people do. For me, the weekly kind of tells you most of what you need to know from a long-term chart perspective. So I don't have an opinion on that, especially when it comes to a crossover, an EMA crossover on the monthly chart. That's just too slow of a moving average for me personally. Weekly maybe, but not on the monthly side. Let's see here. Every 15 minutes. Nice. Oh, in from crypto since 2017. All right. She says, I've been saying this from the start. Note is a whale. Every time he comes online, the markets crash or go to the moon. No. No, my friend. No, unfortunately. Oh, everyone's bearish. You think we pump? Yeah. You know, and that's a good point, right, in this space. Like, it's very, you know, I don't use, like, the sentiments to, like, make my trading decisions, but when sentiment is at extremes, I absolutely pay attention, right? On both sides. When sentiment is crazy euphoric and everyone thinks, oh man, this is gonna go another 10K from here after it's already gone up, you know, triple. I pay attention to that, and I certainly, you know, I rarely sell at the exact top or buy at the exact bottom, but I do pay attention to that, and certainly will take a contrarian stance, and it just makes sense to do it sometimes. All right. Okay, cool. I'm going to get to some of these other thoughts here. So we talked market dominance, we talked news, some of the biggest winners and losers of the week here. So starting with some of the big cap names, Binance Coin has actually been doing relatively well versus BTC. If you look at the 4-hour chart on Binance Coin, I'll clear some of these indicators and we'll get back to them if we need them here. But if you look at the Binance chart, I mean, it had that big breakout, pulled back right to the moving average pair, and just has been steadily marching higher. So certainly one of the bigger winners on the week here. When did the week start here? The week started on October, 13th? So, you know, if you go back to the week here, I mean, it's, you know, not a bad little move for a big cap name, 13%. Most names aren't, you know, outstanding moves for the most part. XRP has been another big winner here this week. If you look at XRP, it just continues to march higher here. It's been in a long trend, on a long uptrend, for some time. I did buy pre-breakout here, sold into this spike and pretty much out of it at this point. But it's been a nice little uptrend here since then. I mean, you can see this very clean lower trend line here on the USD side, or on the BTC side. If you go to XRP USD, we'll do Binance Tether. There's a very clear line that you got to pay attention to, right? If it starts to lose that line after such a big uptrend, generally speaking, not a good thing. There are some divergences showing up here I would make note of, right? If you got these higher highs and RSI is not confirming, making a lower high. MACD, histogram, slight divergence, probably not that much to pay attention to. But, you know, the trend is your friend. It could still have another leg higher, and that divergence could continue to play out before it finally decides to have a longer consolidation. But certainly there's signs that maybe the momentum is starting to slow a little bit. So I'd be paying attention to that. But the trend remains upward for now. See how long that lasts on the daily chart. Price is still holding above that daily 10 EMA, which right now is at 28.36. So XRP, one of the stronger moves this week here. Basic attention, not Bart. Bart, is there a Bart coin? Basic attention has been in a nice little move here for quite some time here. Again, one of the bigger winners on the week, holding up relatively well versus Bitcoin, but the same story. And I kind of highlighted this yesterday in the video was, you know, there are some signs that this is slowing down right at, you know, right at this resistance point here. RSI is pausing, but it could be setting up for another leg higher. If we go to BAT USD or BAT Tether, you know, the daily has room to run before it's anywhere near overbought, so it certainly has room to go. The 4-hour chart is in consolidation mode. I actually like the Tether setup here over the BTC setup, so definitely worth paying attention to. A little bit of a breakout setup there. You can see right at 23 cents. I mean, almost to the penny. You're seeing this setting up. You know, maybe kind of cup and handle-ish. It's a little bit V-shaped, but you got this kind of setup here with this pullback forming, so something to watch. Either way, the line that I'm be paying attention to here is that 23-cent mark on the USD side. So I like this chart a little bit better from the USD side rather than from the Bitcoin pair, but I will definitely pay attention to both pairs for some of these movers. Who else was a big mover? 0x, you know, held up relatively well versus Bitcoin. Starting to feel a little double toppy right now, but could also be doing one of these here. Let me clear my target lines there. So you're looking at that, maybe a symmetrical or an ascending triangle type of formation in the works. But if it undercuts this closing level here, which is basically around 3,600 on that BTC pair, then it very quickly starts to look like a double top, and I'd be a lot more cautious at that point. So, and that's the thing with these ascending triangle breakout, you know, these ascending triangle formations is you generally want at least 3 touches to the line. You got 1, 2, 3, and then when it pulls back, you know, this is kind of like, hey, it's go time, right? You're going to either bounce here and, you know, finish the pattern, or it's going to be breakdown time, and it quickly turns into a double top at that point. So certainly could go either way. At this point, just kind of in consolidation mode. Again, this has had a very strong run already, so it's due. It's due for a little bit longer of a breather after such a very nice move that it had, you know, here in the month of, you know, since September, really, September, October. I mean, just one of the stronger names as of late. And who else? And your crowd favorite, Doge. Doge. You know, not too bad. Up about 30-some% this week. So again, one of the stronger names on the week here. And so who's the losers? Well, some of the bigger losers this week have been some of the prior week's big winners, of course. Chainlink, I wouldn't say what's the biggest loser, but it's, you know, it's kind of been in some consolidation mode, has had a very strong move, you know, maybe down, down 15% on the week. You know, not that bad. I mean, it's a normal pullback in crypto land. I've been watching this one here just because, you know, this pullback has been interesting to see this play out right at that 382 retracement level, bouncing, kind of holding up right now, maybe ready to get going again. Link USD, how's Link USD look? Not quite as hot, still trending lower. You got this trend line, and it's always interesting to see the confluence of resistance levels. Check this out. Let's zoom in here a little bit. So you've got, you got the horizontal price support, then becomes resistance when it breaks down. And to me, horizontal price is way more important than trend lines, diagonal trend lines. They're just a little bit more subjective, so you got to be careful with those. But you got this horizontal price support. Bounce finds some support here, big volume on this hammer reversal candle, bounces right up to that horizontal line, which just happens to correspond with this diagonal line, and it's pulling back. So interesting to see if we can finally break through here. That'd be a positive win. So $2.50 above that point would be very positive on the link side. So, and that could line up with a upside continuation on that BTC pullback that we're seeing. The BTC pair looks a little bit more positive than this side here. Who else was the bigger loser here? Raven saw some selling pressure here yesterday, continues to lose. Again, had a very strong move in the last few weeks, and then down about 16% since that recent swing high. Again, 16% is relative, right? I mean, it sounds like a lot, but in crypto land, it's probably not that much, especially considering it went up 54% from that swing low. Who else? A couple more. We'll do two more, and then I'll get some names from you guys. Decred. Oh, man, Decred. The smacking continues. Man, this project, the team is really cool. This project had some interesting points, but is this guy dead? I mean, is Decred, like, is it over? One of the biggest losers on the week here. EOS. EOS, just flattish. How's EOS dollar look? I was watching this bear flag. One of the charts I posted at the start of the week here in the Slack group saying, this looks like a good short candidate to me. Either way, we were coming to a head. I said, this is going to resolve itself one way or the other this week. And, odds favor to break to the downside. And sure enough, that's what we're seeing there. Break to the downside out of this little bear flag here. All right. I'm just curious to see how this lined up here. Look at that. Right to the 618. Interesting. So breakdown point bounced right to the 618, and then it's just kind of drifted lower since then. So, okay, my friends, I'm going to take a swig of some coffee. I'm the biggest loser. How many pounds did you lose this week? Let me catch up on some of these comments, and I'll start taking some notes here. Yeah, so Rafael says, do not trade, people, just hodl. And, arguably, I would say if you're new to trading, or even if you're relatively experienced, I mean, and it's always hard because in the crypto space, right, generally people come in with both mindsets, right? You have the trading aspect, which is very attractive for a lot of reasons. But then you have kind of the long-term vision, right, of let's hold, accumulate some of these coins, and, over the next however long, they're going to be worth way more, especially Bitcoin, right? And that's the idea. So it's always the balance of, should you trade? Should you just hodl? Should you just dollar cost average in? And my personal opinion is, unless you're like really good at trading or you've got a lot of time to dedicate to it, I would keep your trading account a relatively small percentage of your overall crypto holdings. That's my personal opinion. Mainly because, you may look back and say, oh, I should have just held and not worried about it, because trading is hard. It takes a lot of time. It's not as easy as it sounds. I can teach you how to read the charts relatively quickly. The hard part of trading is the psychology, right? It's following the rules. It's doing the boring stuff like tracking your trades and keeping a trade journal and all that boring stuff. But that's really ultimately what makes you a better trader over the long run. And when you're looking at a trading strategy and that sort of thing, that's kind of always the benchmark, right? Is how does it compare to the buy and hold? So if you traded Bitcoin for a year, how would your results compare to whether or not you just bought Bitcoin at the start of the year, and how did you perform, right? So if Bitcoin went up 20% over the year, did your trading account grow by more than that? Was it worth the time and the effort that you put into it? And that's kind of the benchmark, right? The long-term buyer versus the buy and hold guy and the trader. So trading is absolutely a lot harder than it seems. if you enjoy it, there are some really good benefits to it. I mean, there's a lot of fun, but in the crypto space, I would argue that trading is a lot harder in crypto than it is in stocks and some of the other things because of the nature of the market. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you never rest. It's still relatively small compared to most other markets. There's not a lot of liquidity in some of these names. Yes, there's an argument to be made for, hey, there's manipulation and wicks, and they take out the stops, and the exchanges are betting against you, and all that fun stuff. But what makes it attractive is some of the outsized moves you get relative to some of these other markets, right? You don't really need a lot of margin in crypto because the moves tend to be, double-digit percentage gains for a while. So, all right, let's see here. So that's my long rant on trading. If you're new, if you're just getting started, keep it smaller. That's all I got to say. Trade less and keep it smaller, right? The two biggest mistakes people trade is, or when people trade is they position size too big and they trade way too much. Hands down, trade way too much. So, okay, and they don't manage risk, of course. I mean, that's a given. I harp on that a lot. Manage risk, have a stop loss. Even with long-term holds, you got to have a stop loss, in my opinion. But okay, let's go here. My opinion on the BTC bottom here. I'm thinking 75, 7K holds, but if it doesn't, who knows? We got a wide range below that down to 6K. Okay. Reading some of these comments here. Wow. All right, let's see what else is on the move here. It's not a whole lot. What's the stronger names right now? Nexus. Oh, geez. Steam. Oh, boy. Altcoin. My lord. Not a lot of fun right now. Let's see. Nexus is a little bit on a tear. This is such a low cap name. I'm always suspect of these like pumps out of nowhere. Long-term chart's not very pretty anyway, but maybe it's finding a low. What was the other one? Augur was on there. Interesting little setup on Augur. Had that big volume spike here last month, and then the daily chart's just kind of been sitting tight. Maybe setting up for a breakout over that level there. Not my cup of tea, but hey. Steam. Is Steam still around? You guys still use Steam? Remember Steam back in the day? Back in my day. Steam looks like it might be putting in a big low here on this daily chart. Big support zone being formed there. Attempting to clear some resistance right now. So maybe breaking out of range here a little bit. That's Steam BTC. Some good volume patterns on this one here too. You got a lot of accumulation here starting to show up here at the most recent time frame since October. So Steam. And again, these are just coming out of the thing here. So let's take a look at link here again. I don't want to see any of these other names. Most of those other names are in blah. Neo, range bound. Smash them likes. Appreciate it, Jake. Always glad to have you, my friend. Oh yeah, XMR. It's funny too, because XMR, every time I was looking at the chart, I was like, God, that thing's just going lower and lower and lower. And then it had like a nice little pump for a couple of days, finally found a low. And yeah, just kind of consolidating now. But man, it was just getting hammered for a while. And finally popping here for about a day or two, consolidating right now. I think it's still looking good. It had that nice little move off the low, maybe setting up a little symmetrical flag or something here on this time frame. Something like this. Who knows? It's always hard when you get that first move off the low, right? A lot of times they're just kind of like little counter trend rallies, and they just keep going, little spike. So certainly from a long-term perspective, you can't say that's the low, V low. Although, the volume, it certainly makes for a bullish case, right? You got a ton of volume here at this spike low, so we'll see. But Long-term chart, my lord. Not very pretty. What's up, Monero? I thought you were going to be like the true privacy crypto. Oh, that news? Yeah. I don't know. There's some crazy people out there. If you read that article about how they use BTC to track some of these illicit videos, but me. All right. Oh, so question, Anton, on the subscription site. Not, and I've got some email requests. We don't have crypto subscription options here at this point. So you are correct. It's credit card and PayPal only. The if you're interested in the videos only and you want to buy them and not hit the subscription site, you can certainly pay with crypto that way on, just send me a message on nodeinvestor.com and I can give you access to the videos through that site. So they're accessible through both sites and we can set something up that way. So crypto on one, not on the subscription just yet. But speaking of which, man, I'm not gonna let the cat out of the bag just yet. But there are some upgrades, updates coming to this site. I've been working on it for the last month or so. I am super excited about how this new site's gonna look. It's coming along nicely. Still got some work to do, testing some things out, making sure the transition is seamless. But this site here is gonna look very nice. I mean, it's going to give you a lot of the same information, but we're going to be adding some more things to it, some more features, and that's all I'm going to say for now because it's going to look pretty good. All right, let's do a few more, guys, and we will wrap it up and call it a weekend. So looking at BTC here, if you just joined, I kind of did a little deep dive here, but the summary is the big picture of Bitcoin. It's right at the ledge right now. It's bouncing off this line here. Pretty much just been range bound since the September 24th drop. And the moving averages are still trending lower. So the first big win would be a close above the 22 EMA, which at this point puts it right around 8,400. If it starts to close above that, things start to look positive, turning the corner there. On the downside, I'm kind of thinking we might see a crack below the line here on the daily chart. And then, sorry, I was reading the comments. And then go from there, maybe it's a shakeout. Maybe we hit 7,500, maybe 7K, and then bounce in from there. But no doubts, it's just kind of a neutral stance at this point. The daily chart, I would say it's neutral. I mean, the RSI has room to go before it hits oversold levels, but it certainly could find a low here and start trending higher. I'm neutral on Bitcoin. Still got a little bit of a short on the ETH side going. In fact, I added a little bit on the bounce yesterday, but I wouldn't exactly say it's a huge position. I added on this bounce into this 178 and then saw this pullback. And yesterday was looking pretty good. Late last night hit the sub 170 level, bouncing right now. But, at this point, it's a green trade either way because I booked some gains earlier and then it bounced, added back to it. So stop losses at break even. So, I mean, it's going to be a winning trade either way. We'll see how this plays out. I don't like to be too bearish, especially at the lows, just because we've already had a pretty decent pullback in Bitcoin. If anything, I'm starting to look the other way and thinking, let's get that washout so we can start going long again. Let me see here. So Jake says, are you going to do the videos for the trading options? Yes, I am still working on them just because I'm covering quite a bit in the tutorial series. I mean, that'll be open to everybody. It'll be free here, but I'm covering quite a bit. I'm going to go into, things like Pine Editor and setting up trading strategies as well. Obviously, all the good stuff like indicators and what are all these fun buttons everywhere. So, working on it. I've been focused a lot on the new site lately, so still working on that. That's kind of been my primary thing, but chipping away at both, especially with the market kind of quiet right now. I like to take advantage and do some of those things. All right, looking at ETH. Yeah, we covered it earlier, but looking at it again here, let me clear some of this stuff. And so, you know, the big picture on ETH, this is ETH USD. Now, ETH BTC, we'll look at that here. That's looking a lot more positive than this pair here. But from the USD side, you know, I was watching this little bounce, bear flaggish type of bounce on that daily chart, which just happened to go right to the, you know, the 618 retracement level on this move here. You can see that the bounce pretty much paused right there. It has been on the decline since then. But you know, how far down am I expecting this to go? Not, you know, I'm not sure it's going to come all the way back down to the 150s, to be honest with you. I was just looking for a quick scalp margin short, but I am still net short on this one until otherwise. On the hourlies here, you look at the RSI, right? We're bouncing off these oversold levels, bouncing right now into now resistance here around 174. Getting back over this 178 level would really start to change the tune and make things look positive. So on the upside, that's kind of my first big resistance level that I want to see it get cleared. On the downside, you know, anywhere from the 160s, maybe 150s is what I'm looking for on that guy. Now looking at it from the BTC pair, let's go to the daily chart. You know, it's been in a nice trend, certainly now in consolidation mode here for the last week and a half or so. There was some signs that the momentum was slowing, but it hasn't really just kind of fallen off the map yet. So I'm keeping an eye on it. It's right at the 22 EMA on this pair here, on this ETH BTC pair. So certainly looking a lot more positive from here, potentially forming a little bit of a bullish consolidation. So breaking out over that, was that 226, 225 or so on the BTC pair would start to look like a solid breakout. So definitely looking at it from both angles at this point. But if it does drop below, say, 2100 or so, doesn't look pretty at that point. I'm thinking you get a pretty solid retrace from there. How far down? Let's see here. If we do, I mean, 382 takes you down to this level, so that'd be a pretty good drop from here. It'd be another 8% or so, and then the 50%'s down another, you know, 5% after that. So we'll see. This side's looking a little bit more positive than the dollar side. But yeah, long term, I agree. It looks like it is finding a bottom. I mean, after a long downtrend, look at this versus Bitcoin. It's just been brutal. Maybe finding a bottom here. Okay. Well, I think that's going to do it for today, guys. Thanks for being here. As always, didn't cover a whole lot. There's really not a whole lot on my radar right now other than the names we looked at. Just kind of taking it easy. Mostly focused on Bitcoin at this point, a few alts, but we're going to see how this one plays out over the weekend. So thanks for being here. As always, we'll see you next time. Take care, everyone.